The importance of a main battle tank can be gauged by the fact that no country in the world can ever dream of becoming even a regional superpower without a capability of having its own main battle tank. When I say own main battle tank, it is the capability to design, develop, and manufacture the tank in its own country. And only a few countries, a handful of countries in the world, have capabilities to design, develop, test, and produce a main battle tank. And fortunately, due to the efforts of DRDO team, Bharat is among those few countries. Today, the Arjun main battle tank, like the Arjun of Mahabharat times, is indeed the best in its class in the world, and thanks to our armed forces for that, because it is their love for import. I call it importomania, and combine it with a tradition of brochure mania that has resulted in Arjun becoming the best in the world. What is brochure mania, you might be wondering? It is the tendency to pick up brochures of all the available weapon systems across the globe and picking up the best features and asking DRDO to develop it. And that is not just for the tank, it has been happening for almost all weapon systems that our forces demanded from DRDO. Hence, invariably, the DRDO is required to develop a system with capabilities that nowhere else existed together in a single system across the world. So that's the beauty of our MBT Arjun. So that's why I say it is among the best in the class because the weight is comparable to Western tanks, and in many of features are even superior to those Western tanks. Now, let's take a look at the accuracy part. The Arjun today has accuracy and combination of firepower capabilities. It can fire while on the move in any direction. That means the gun can fire in any direction in 360 degrees, irrespective of the direction of movement of the tank. Then it has got a remote controlled weapon station for its anti-craft gun and all, which can be fired even while the hatch is closed. So, right, the gunner keep sitting inside the tank can fire those guns, remaining protected within the tank. Now, then it has got a wide range of ammunitions which can be fired from the main gun. Normally, the tanks across the world, each tank has two or maximum three kind of ammunition which can be fired from the main gun. But in case of Arjun Mark II, the forces demanded a very wide range. And today, five main class of ammunitions can be fired from the gun. Namely, it can fire the finished stabilized armored piercing discarding servo. It can fire high explosive splash head, that is hash. It can fire penetration combat blast ammunitions, that is PCBs. It can also fire the deadly, very, very devastating thermobaric weapons. And add to this, it has the capability to fire anti-tank guided missiles from the main gun. Now coming to what you call the protection part. The Arjun provides unparalleled protection to its occupants and the arsenal and equipment inside the tank. The indigenously developed Kanchan armor, which was developed by our DRDO sister about DMRL, it is nearly undefeatable and it is regarded as the best in its class. Then in Mark II and Mark 1A, the forces demanded another aspect of protection, that was another layer of protection, which is called explosive reactive armor. And this further enhances the protection. What is explosive reactive armor? Basically, it is a kind of a explosive which is sandwiched between thick steel plates. So when a tandem warhead, the modern anti-tank guided missiles, they have tandem warheads. So it is two warheads uh, coming in tandem. The first one weakens the armor, and the second one is able to pierce and go inside the tank and explode the tank. So the moment the first warhead hits the ERA, the ERA explodes. As a result, the main armor of the tank remains protected, so the tank remains protected. Then there is another addition was demanded, and that is mine throws. The Arjun has capability to clear mines which are laid in its path. Then come to mobility. Mobility in a battlefield is very crucial. And the indigenous hydro-pneumatic suspension has given extraordinary performance. This enables the Arjun tank to provide excellent stabilization of the platform, which is very important for increasing the accuracy. And also, it provides a comfort to the crew. So, the obvious question is why Arjun Mark II is not yet inducted into service. It was somewhere in 1970, perhaps October 70. A symposium was held in the Armored Corps Center in school to discuss the need and feasibility of having an indigenous main battle tank. The process got some momentum when the 1971 war, serious gaps were identified in our country's defense needs, and a strong need for a superior main battle tank for the western sector was felt. Possibly the eastern sector was sadly presumed as safe forever. Now, after passing through lengthy bureaucratic processes, a project was finally sanctioned to DRDO in 1974, mid-70s. Now, I don't remember the exact PDC of the project, but globally, even the experienced team that have all the experience and expertise available to them, and where the industrial ecosystem is available, they also take about 15 years to develop a new MBT from scratch. Nevertheless, by 1979, and with very meager funds, I would say, in fact, the funds position has always been a problem right from the beginning, and it has been reflected well in successive uh, reports of the parliamentary standing committees that the country has been spending very, very little, a very small fraction of defense budget and the overall GDP as compared to other nations. But anyway, that's a different matter. By 1979, the project sanctioned in 74, within 5 years, system configuration of the tank was completed and work was entering a prototype phase. It's what you do, you design, sit on the drawing board, and then go to develop a prototype. And at that time, a bombshell was dropped on the team. The requirement initially projected was for a 105 mm gun. The tank was supposed to have a 105 mm gun, main gun. It was suddenly changed to a 120 mm gun. Going from 105 mm to 120 mm gun is a drastic change. Now, a tank's primary gun is not some kind of a store to be transported on the tank. It is the integral part and a functional part of an MBT. And such upgradation from 105 to 120 meant much more weight much more than weight or a bigger size. It required a complete redesign of the tank. Apart from size and weight, it also has much higher recoil. A gun has a recoil, and the tank has to withstand the recoil, absorb the recoil while on the move. That's another condition. So, in one stroke, the team was pushed back to square one. The tank had to be redesigned, and that's what done. Now, since we have to witness many such shockers, bombshells, please allow me to ask a basic question. A basic question. I have no doubts on the competence of our armed personnel and their experience in tank warfare. Right from the beginning, they have been super. After all, it was our General Themaya who took, in the world for the first time, it took the tanks to heights of 4,000 meters during 1948 at Zozila. So, no doubt about our forces' capabilities. Or neither I have any doubt on their capability to foresee their technical requirements. Now, the question remains, what happened in just 5 years that necessitated just drastic change in the requirements, changing the main gun? I think no answer. And such incidences of sudden change of requirements at crucial phases in the development process, they are not exceptions. They have been more or less routine during the past 6 decades. Yes. All through this has been happening. By the moment the product development reaches a crucial phase, suddenly the requirements are changed and the team is sent to back to square one. Has it been a tactic to facilitate imports? Well, let the viewers judge. But I call this as importomania. Now, coming to the indigenous MBT again. Accordingly, the fresh GSQR was issued in the later part of 1982, practically pushing the project started to 1983. Ideally, in any other country, the R&D organization would be asked for sanction of a fresh project for the fresh GSQR, because the GSQR has completely changed. Fresh project is warranted. And any other country, the organization would have been allowed to continue development of the smaller original tank also. After all, you have spent more than 5 years on that tank. Let's go ahead and produce it, at least come to the prototype level. But no, this is Bharat. Continuing to work on the smaller tank was not in DRDO's hand. Because as I said, a government organization cannot function independently in the government setup. Instead of sanctioning a fresh project, funds under the previous sanction were enhanced. And later on, DRDO is almost invariably criticized, saying that, of course, unethically and immorally, and perhaps intentionally, or maybe out of ignorance, to have been developing MBT since 1970s and resulting in cost escalations and all those things. Well, it is not 1970s. The new GSQR came into picture in late 1982. Okay, fine. Even while discussing Arjun Mark II, which has been very cleverly forced to be called as Arjun Mark 1A, I would keep calling it Arjun Mark II because it is in fact Arjun Mark II and not Mark 1A. And why it has been forced to be called as Mark 1A? It is only for an issue related to the performance of an imported ammunition rather than the performance of tank itself. But unique. This is the way the DRDO is forced to work. Now, The DRDO in November 1983, working with extraordinary zeal and burning midnight oil, succeeding in rolling out the first prototype of the MBT based on the revised GSQR issued in later part of 1982, barely 1 year. The realization of MBT for our army involved participation of a very large number of stakeholders. Tank development is not just a one-man job or one team's job. It's a large team. Besides the ministry, the army, the DRDO, and the mandatorily designated HVF, Heavy Vehicle Factory at Awadi, as the lead production agency. There were other directorates of the MOD involved, like the Directorate of Inspection and lots and so forth, plus and numerous Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 industries, both in the private sector as well as the public sector, because private sector till that time was allowed to participate only in the development of or production of components and small subsystems. So large number of hundreds of industries were involved. And the moment you make one change, the whole thing, it's a kind of a throwing a spanner in the wheel, probably. To keep all the stakeholders together in the loop and avoid delays due to poor communication, DRDO took an initiative to bring all stakeholders on one table and conducting frequent meetings. And a seminar for the first time was held with all the stakeholders in 1984. And in 1985, April, to be more accurate, General Vaidya, the then Chief of Army, named the tank as Arjun. Meanwhile, another shock was waiting for Arjun team. Yet another major revision of GSQR was hammered down in November 1985. You see, in 1982, and just 3 years, another revision. It involved incorporation of a long list of advanced features. As usual, instead of sanctioning the fresh project, funds were revised, PDCs were revised. Blame goes to DRDO that you started project in 1970 with that much money and now it is that much money. Well, who is going to see that what has been going on in between and how many times the new requirements are being projected? Please note that time duration needed for just for movement of files in our colonial era legacy bureaucracy is phenomenal. Okay. 1985, new demands requirements are projected, and enhancement of funds took almost, you can say, 1.5 years. In order to expedite the work, 10 prototypes had been realized by 1988. Just see. The DRDO kept working parallelly, and therefore, by 88, we could realize 10 prototypes and kept on doing testing and evaluation of subsystems parallelly. So that there are 10 pieces, one system being tested on one prototype, another system being tested on another prototype. That's how we could, save the time. It's our own innovation. By 1989, 2 additional prototypes were also realized, where all the systems put together were incorporated, and these were you can say, the tank in a form which will ultimately going to production. Meanwhile, the user had indicated confidence and preference for an already proven power pack. And that's how MTU engine from Germany had to be brought in, and it landed in Arjun MBT. This MTU business is again, it will be discussed at different times because it is involved in even with the controversies related to Arjun Mark II or Mark 1A, whatever you may call it. By 1982, the first 2 pre-production series tanks had also been realized and had undergone comprehensive joint technical trials in which the DRDO team and Army both were involved. That was in 1992. And soon the performance was demonstrated to the then Raksha Mantri, Raksha Rajya Mantri, the Chief of Army Staff, and several members of the parliament. Then began in 1993 the never-ending saga of user trials and more trials, summer after summer, with intermittent sprinkling of more changes in the QRs. Earlier, the two revisions were comprehensive revisions, but this tidbit something new is to be added. आप ठीक है भाई घर की मुर्गी है क्या करो जो मर्जी कह दो. Now wait a minute and let me ask a pertinent question. Which weapon supplier or manufacturer in the world would agree to deliver such unfavorable and unrealistic and uncertain ecosystem? Will anybody agree to deliver under such circumstances? But DRDO had to. Now, by mid-94, 6 pre-production stage trials had been handed over to the 43rd Armored Corps Regiment for what they call as accelerated clearance trials, and within a year, 9 more were delivered. By 1996, Arjun, the Pagamtapt tanks were said to have been made to run cumulatively over 70,000 kilometers and fired more than 10,000 rounds of ammunition. And by the way, most of the tanks across the world are designed to run about 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers during their lifespan. So you can imagine the quantum of testing our Arjun had to undergo. Finally, the January month of 1996 witnessed Arjun getting dedicated to the nation by the then Prime Minister Shri P.V. Narasimha Rao ji. Half a year later, an indent for production and supply of 15 limited series production tanks was released by MOD to MOD. By 1999, even the so-called final list of modifications suggested by the user had been demonstrated. Changes after changes, everything incorporated and delivered to demonstrated to the user. Then what happened? In the March 2000, the commencement of a new millennium witnessed release of and an indent of 124 tanks by the MOD to the MOD. For a tank indigenously designed, developed by the MOD. I'm deliberately using these words MOD to MOD and again to MOD to highlight the kind of system, the way the system has been working. And within MOD, it takes months and sometimes years and whatnot. Now kindly look at the numbers. Only 124. Is it not a mockery of publicity? Publicly declared policy of self-reliance? When you take a look at the Indica car, when Tata's developed Indica, the stabilization of the production took almost 1 lakh vehicles. 1 lakh vehicles were produced, and only later on the production got a stabilization phase. And in case of after so much of revisions of QRs, now only 124 tanks. Tell me, which industry will set up facilities for manufacture of 124 tanks and the components and the subsystems and all that? It's economically unviable. Now compare this with the betrayal of deciding. I call it, yes, betrayal. It was a betrayal of deciding to import more than 300 T-90 tanks in the same year. By end 2000, a decision to import a light tank 300 T-90 tanks was taken. And that was the time when this T-90 was still undergoing evaluation and evolution in the country of its origin. Ha, betrayal and killing of Arjun. Ah, the, the country suffering from nobody killed Jessica Sindhu. Arjun is killed, but nobody killed it. MOD betraying MOD. Ministry of Defense betraying Ministry of Defense. For what sake? Anyway, let public view it, let public decide. By the way, total number of T-90 tanks as reported in the media today are more than 1,600. Just imagine, imported tank 1,600. Own tank till date, only 124 tanks are there with the services. The indigenous tank, only 124, imported 1,600. And I ask another question. If in 2000 a light tank was to be imported, then why the original project was shelved, where DRDO was told to develop a light tank? MOD, if it needed 3 crew and T-90 tanks, why the original specifications given to DRDO were enhanced to a heavy 4 crew tank? After all, 4 people have to sit inside the tank. Size has to go up. You cannot ask the 4th person to sit on the top of the tank. Now, were these procurement planners incompetent? Or were they suffering from the chronic importomania, the deadly, insatiable desire to import and more import since 1947, 1948, Jeep import goof up. Everybody knows about it. You type, Google it, the Jeep scandal of 1948, and you will know what happened. And since then, it has been a saga of so many imports, each one having a question mark. But after all, we have a nobody killed Jessica syndrome. So, coming back to our own Arjun, did the betrayal end with the import of T-90 tank in 2000? No. By the year 2004, the TOT by DRDO to the heavy vehicle factory was complete. And a batch of the first 5 tanks were handed over to the army. So soon came yet another demand, or better call it as yet another betrayal. The GSQR so far had specified only shallow folding. That is, a shallow folding is a capability for the vehicle to cross water bodies that are up to 1.4 meter deep. Apparently, Army had not catered for the eastern border, only western border was in mind when they framed the specification for Arjun tank originally. Rather, you can say till this point of time. Remember, already the indent for 124 tanks have been produced. The tank has been thoroughly evaluated, tried, tested, and cleared for production. And now, suddenly, the higher medium folding is demanded. Medium folding means 2.15 meters, from 1.4 to 2.15 meters. Now the tank has to cross 2.15 meters water. To make the things even worse, Arjun was not allowed to have any ingress of water as against imported T-90. For Arjun, 0 ingress. For T-90, certain amount, specified amount was allowed. Normally what happens is when the water and tank enters deeper waters and the water starts ingressing into the tank, there are pumps installed to throw out the water. So that much ingress is permissible. but not for Arjun. Zero, nil ingress allowed at 2.15 meters. With no other options, the demand had to be fulfilled, but the delay once again goes to the account of Ghar ka murga dal barabar, helpless DRDO. Okay, having demonstrated medium fording in the presence of Raksha Mantri, a batch of 14 tanks was handed over to Army in 2007. Even as TOT from DRDO to HBF was in full swing, someone in the Army seems to have decided to conduct yet another round of trials. After production intent has been issued, production is going on, yet another round of trial, and they called it as accelerated user cum reliability trials. भैया ये तो पहले करने का था, reliability है कि नहीं है. But anyway, okay, 2 tanks from the limited series production lot were randomly picked up by the user for their trials. And each tank was made to run about 5,000 kilometers and fire 500 rounds. It was to be conducted in 5 phases, and each tank will run for 1,000 kilometers and fire 100 rounds. So multiplied by 5, it becomes 5,500 rounds. These so-called accelerated user cum reliability trials were to be conducted in 5 phases, as I told, in Pokhran and Mahajan ranges, and peak summer times when the temperatures are above 50 degrees centigrade in the Thar desert. The declared aim was to assess the adequacy and engineering support package and maintainability and reliability and the maximum life parameters, all these things. But one day, it was reportedly announced in public by a very senior army official that the power pack of Arjun had failed during these trials. Citing these as failures, along with some other issues that were highlighted in public, it was reportedly stated that Army will not induct any Arjun tank. Complete betrayal. Decades of hard work sent to drain, and that too in a public announcement somewhere in some seminar or so. Several other issues were also highlighted, though the actual report of and the manner in which the trials were conducted by the Army, they were never made public. Defense का मामला है भाई, secret है. This was utterly shocking. Shocking because the power pack from the foreign vendor had a long proven record of reliable performance. Then what has gone wrong? The then Raksha Rajya Mantri, Rao Indrajit Singh Ji, in talking to media, or perhaps I don't remember talking in the parliament somewhere, publicly, he had indicated possibilities of deliberate sabotage during the trials. Deliberate sabotage during trials. It was widely believed that driven at extreme, that the tanks were driven at extreme RPMs for long duration. This was heard because the report was never made public. Then DRDO decided to equip Arjun with a data logger that would automatically record key parameters indicating the manner in which the tanks were operated as well as the performance of the tank components. Just like we have a data logger in an aircraft, a kind of a black box, where the entire data goes and it is sealed. Since then, since the time this data logger was installed, Power Pack has never given any such problem. No problem at all. However, the trial mania, I can say, trial mania It did not stop there. Another round of extended accelerated user come reliability trial was ordered. Now they call it extended accelerated user come reliability trials. Once again, trial thousands of kilometers. This time, Arjun came out in flying colors. Then somebody at top levels in the army decided to have the Arjun MBT evaluated by an external agency. Now, see the kind of joke is being played. 2000, the indent has been issued, the production is going on in full swing, but induction is not taking place. Trial after trial after trial. Now, this time it was demanded that no, we, our country, we don't have experience in designing tanks or evaluating them. Let us hire some external agency. So, in January 2009, IMI of Israel was entrusted with the task of evaluating Arjun. The IMI trials were completed. The evaluation was completed by May 2009. I mean, I would say they worked very professionally, and within a matter of 4 to 5 months, they completed it. Report was submitted, tank was cleared, and IMI called it Desert Ferrari. As we all know, Ferrari is a renowned car in the world. So it was called Desert Ferrari. On May 26, 2009, Army accepted the remaining tanks for the first regiment of Arjun, and in November 2010, the remaining tanks against the indent placed by MOD in 2000, after a gap of 10 years, Army accepted the 124 tanks, and that's how the two regiments came into being. Any country genuinely desiring to achieve self-reliance in the area of MBTs and having a value for taxpayers' money would have ordered Arjun tanks in thousands now. Did it happen in India? In India, the chapter of Arjun Mark I came to an end because now Army wanted 15 major improvements in Arjun Mark I. Once again, 15 more changes. Changes that required, once again, very, very significant changes in the tank.